This video goes over how to download and set up and use the Age of Steam Vassal module. If you already have it, then you can skip ahead a few minutes. Otherwise, go to the Vassal website, navigate to the module section, find Age of Steam, and download the files you need. You need at least the program, which is the .vmod file, and then a bunch of maps you might like are also there. All of those end in the extension .vmdx. When you download them, you put all that stuff in the same location on your computer with a folder that shares the same name as the mod file with an underscore ext suffix that has all of the extension map files in there. Opening the module the first time can be a little slow, depending on how many maps you have downloaded. So you just go to Vassal, click Open Module, find the module for Age of Steam on your computer, and either double click on it or click it and choose the Open button, whatever it is. You want the .vmod file. So I have a lot of map extensions installed on my computer, so this is a very sped up clip. It actually took several minutes to load all of my map extensions. Yours should go faster the first time. After that, it's a much quicker process opening the Vassal module. It really shouldn't need to load all this stuff every single time, unless you have installed a new version of the mod. Once the mod has been installed, then you can start a game. You open Vassal, open the Age of Steam module either by double-clicking on it or right-clicking and choosing Open Module. First, we'll go over how to use these predefined setups. So you choose the Start a New Game, and there should be a list of predefined setups in your Select Setup dropdown, and depending on which extensions you have, you just pick one, hit the Next button, choose your player color. There should be a choice of 8 or so. Don't use Overseer. That one has access to see everyone's hidden hands. When you choose a color, you will only be able to see your own hand of things. Once you do that, you'll see whatever setup has been predefined, and that means whatever components were in there, the map, the game displays, the income display, all that stuff set up. However, the predefined setups are probably saved in some older version of the module, and the better way to do it is to create your own setup. So instead of choosing a setup, choose the New Game No Predefined setup when you open a mod, and then you will lay out the various components that you want. You still choose your color first, and then you will get a window where you create the board you want. You just increase the size, add some rows and columns, and then add the various pieces that you need. The main ones are the color score sheet on the left, and then the color goods display below that. I generally put the map in the middle. You should have a long list of maps here to choose from, and then a player aid of some sort on the right side. Once you do that, you will see the same sort of setup, but you will lose anything that's predefined. So sometimes those predefined setups have rule summaries. They might have some pieces already laid out, various things. But the advantage is that you now are using whatever latest features are incorporated in the basic module, which may not have been saved in those predefined setups. Next, you'll want to go to the Pieces button and drag out a player mat for each of the players who are going to be in the game, and just put them wherever is convenient on your display. In this case, I'll just put them over here on the left side below the income and score sheet displays. When players click on their playmat, it will update to display their name. Here I clicked the yellow one, for example. After you set that up, you can set the number of players in the game by right-clicking the Number of Players button. That will add appropriate markers to show when the game will end. Then most maps will have a setup button somewhere on them. Usually it's in a corner, top or bottom of the map, and that setup button defines whatever is particular to that map, and it'll set up the cubes on the goods display and on the map. So clicking that has put all our cubes out. Some maps will do other things as well. For example, here the game is one turn shorter, so an extra blocker has been placed to show the game ending on turn 7. The next step is getting online with the game. And for that, you open the server controls by clicking that button. That will take you to the Vassal server. You have to click that left right arrow button thing again to actually get online with the server and connect with it. That gets you into what they call their main room. You can see your name on the far right showing you in that room. Here I'm just creating a new folder. You can name it what you like. I named it Age of Steam KS, and that puts me in that room. When other people want to join your game, they navigate to that area, right click on it, and for them, they will be able to select Join Room. And once they're in your room, they will automatically synchronize, but sometimes you may need to force synchronization by right clicking on the name of the person who created the game and choosing Synchronize. Next, we'll take a pretty detailed look at most of the buttons at the top of your screen. Just going from left to right, we've already talked about the first one, the server controls, which you use to connect and disconnect from Vassal's server. You use it to open and close the connection window, and then use those various buttons there. I'm not going to go over that in any more detail. I will skip that retire button. You use that to change sides. But the extras is what you will need more often. That has a bunch of stuff in it, depending on which map extensions you've installed. You can resize the top part of your screen to be able to see things better. And then there are several sub-panels within that, tabs, and you can use the left right arrows there to scroll through them and to see what they are. They're not too relevant for the most part, but you can drag extra bits and pieces out of there if you need them. Generally, you won't use the extras tray when you're actually playing. It's more for setting up things. But you can use, for example, that map pieces tray if you have it there to draw your own maps. That is specifically from one of the extensions, so you may or may not see that stuff. But to use things in there, you just click and drag them out onto your map. Like most things in Vassal, if you right-click on a component, you can see all the commands that are available to it. There's usually keyboard shortcuts as well that you can see when you right-click. Otherwise, you just click that toggle button to close it, and then we'll go over to the game pieces tray. That one has more tabs in there that have a bunch of components that you're much more likely to use. The first one are the player mats, and then the markers, small and large, various other things you may or may not use. Most of the time, you'll only actually use the player mats tab, and that's only during the setup when you are dragging the ones that are going to be used in the game out onto your virtual table. Next, we have the tracks tray. That shows all the tracks that are actually in the game. These are piece limited like they are in the actual board game. The tracks you saw in the extras tray are unlimited, so you normally wouldn't use those. But again, you just click and drag things to the map where you want to use them. The count of pieces available should update as you move things in and out of the track rack. When you get them on the map, you again can right-click to see how things work, but the general controls are left and right arrows to rotate left and right. R generally returns things back to wherever they came from. The next button is the player aids toggle. That has a bunch of things. This first piece is the share tool. If you're familiar with nomograms, you might be able to figure out how to use this, but what you do is click to draw a line button, then draw a line from the leftmost column, which is the sum of your expenses. Draw it through the next line, which is a sum of your current cash on hand and how much ever new income you expect to earn this turn for both of your deliveries. And wherever it intersects that third vertical line will tell you how many shares you need to issue. The share calculator will do all this math for you. I'll talk about that later. The other two parts of the aids button show you the turn sequence and track cost summary. These are both included in the player aid that I've usually set up as part of the predefined setups. Next up is the notes button. The predefined setups will have rule summaries here typically. There are other tabs which you will almost never use unless maybe you're playing this asynchronously, but you can chat here as well, but most commonly you just get on Discord and chat that way. Next button is dice. There are several predefined selections that you use typically to roll, for example, for goods growth. If you click the any dice, then you can roll whatever dice combo you like, whatever number of faces, or how many of those you want. But otherwise, you'll typically just use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 66, and when you click the button, you'll see the results in the dialog box. The next set of buttons is the set of player windows. Most of those should be grayed out. You really only should have access to whatever color you signed yourself in as. When you click that, you'll get a personal window there. Most maps won't really have much there except for this share calculator thing. And you click on the various costs that you expect, use the up and down arrows to change what you expect to spend, for example, on your track, how much you're willing to bid, your final engine level at the end of the turn, and how much new income you're going to add on your next 2 deliveries. And as you do those things, the shares to issue should update in real time, and that should give you some ballpark idea. I think it's pretty accurate on how many shares to issue this turn. To actually issue those shares, you're going to use the share track. You find your own marker and you can just drag it manually if you like, and then go and update your income manually by clicking on your player mat and using the up and down arrows to give yourself more cash. There's also a better way to do it, which we'll go over later. Finally, setting up the rest of the table, the player mats will have the player names once the players click on the mats. Of the colors that are not used, you want to delete all that extra stuff. You can select things in Vassal by clicking on them, and if you want to select multiple things, after you click that first thing, you hold the Shift button down and then click on the other things you want to select. So here I am multi-selecting all the colors of discs that are not in the game, and then Control D is going to delete them, or if you right click and you can choose the one that says delete all markers of this color, and that will clean up the displays. To summon player markers to your player mat, the players can just select their mat and then hit M. You'll need to hit M 20 times if you want to play a game where you're piece limited with 20 ownership markers, or just pull the pieces to your mat as you need them, or you can clone markers that are already on the board. Here I'm going to multi-select the other 3 player mats and hit M 20 times to pull in all the markers for the game. Then before hitting setup, you want to set the number of players in the game, and you right click on that and choose the number of players from the drop down. That will add the end of game markers on the turn track so you know when the game ends. If you want to shorten the game even further, then you can click that -1 turn button below it. Normally, if that -1 turn is part of the game setup, then that setup button will take care of it. For example, here in the Portugal map, the game lasts 1 turn less, so clicking setup has put out all the cubes and also shortened the game by 1 turn. And now you're pretty much ready to play. You just set the initial turn order by using the dice button and rolling the 1,000-sided die for initial turn order. Everyone does that, and then move the player markers onto the turn order track according to whatever the initial turn order is, and now you're ready to play. So finally, we'll go through the game as you go from step to step. First one being issuing shares. As I said, you could do it manually by moving the share markers around and updating your player mat with the up and down arrows. But instead, you do your normal calculations, figure out how many shares you want to issue. Then if you go to the share track and find your own little share marker there, if you right click on it, you'll see some options for what you can quickly and easily do. Issue 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 shares being the main things. If you just select that appropriate number, your player mat will update automatically and your share marker will move ahead automatically. So everyone does that in turn order, issuing shares, and their player mats get updated with the appropriate amount of cash. Typically, we're chatting, so you just do it verbally, but we do normally like to include some text message in the chat window as well. in case Discord cuts out. So you go around, bidding, all this stuff is done manually, and as players pass, you just move their markers manually down to the appropriate spot on the turn track. Eventually, all players will have passed, and as they drop out of the bid, they will have to adjust their cash manually to reflect how much they paid for their bid. You can do that by using the up and down arrows, or if you click on your player mat and hit S, you can set the cash directly to how much ever you ended up with. Next step is selecting the special action. This also has to be done manually. When you choose locomotive, you would manually move your marker up, or right click and choose advance one level, or select your marker and hit the 1 button to jump ahead 1 level. Everyone else chooses their actions and drags that stuff, their markers, into the action spots manually as well. Next up, we're going to build track. I typically move the markers off the spaces as the actions are used. To build track, you open the track tray, drag tracks out onto the board however you want to build, and everyone obviously does that in turn order. The controls for this are available to you if you drag the track marker out and right click on them. The main controls you'll use are simply left and right arrows to rotate counterclockwise and clockwise, or if you select a track and hit R, it'll return the track to the tray. As you put your ownership markers out, you have the option to update the track value. Each marker can be updated with some numeric value. You just use the up and down arrows. If you like to keep track of victory points as the game is playing, you can do that during the game, or if you want to have a little suspense for the final game turn, you can just leave them all set to 0 and then update the track values only at the end of the game. When you click on ownership markers, you have the ability to highlight them by clicking on them and choosing H. Otherwise, other players won't really see what you're doing. So if you're online and playing a game, you have to select a marker and hit H to highlight it if you want to show other people something. So our normal practice is to build track, and as you put markers out, they will automatically be highlighted to show what you've done. And then at the end of your turn, you hit the escape button, or there's a button at the top of the window, which is currently off screen here, but at the top of the window that says remove highlights, and either clicking that or clicking escape will remove the highlights. So here, blue was first built and has gone, yellow has built, red has got engineer, and they're going to do some building, and then green will urbanize and build. When you urbanize, all the cities are already in the goods display at the top of the columns. You can just click and drag those cities to wherever you need them on the map. And as you build, you again have to update your cash manually based on the track costs. After everyone has done building, we move on to the move goods step. Again, those go in turn order, of course. And moving goods involves selecting a cube, selecting a route, and showing the other players what you're doing. Again, when you click on things, the other players won't necessarily see what's happening. So you have to use the highlight function. If you are moving your engine level up, you can just drag the marker or use the menu option, jump ahead a level. Highlighting and flashing your icon, your marker, is helpful so other players can see what you're doing. When you want to move goods, you're going to ideally want to select the good you're going to move, highlight the route that you're using, and flash that with the highlight function to show everyone what you're doing. So the way you do that is first click anywhere on the map to make sure you've not selected anything. Then click on the cube, the single cube that you want to move. Then, while holding the shift key button down, you can select the markers, the ownership markers along the route that you want to use, And then if you just hit H, you can highlight everything and everything will flash. Then, after you've shown everyone the route, you go to your income marker and either drag your income marker ahead or use the right click and quick key press buttons to show how much income you've earned, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and click that. After that, go back to the cube, select just the cube, and either right click and choose return to good stack, or click the good, select R to return it to the good stack. The cities typically also have an outline, so you can do this where you not only show the route but also the end destination by multi-selecting all those things, hitting the H a few times to flash the route. Keep in mind that when you're doing that, all of those things are selected, so after you've shown the route, you're best off going into your income track to update your income. Now only your income track marker is selected. Then go to the cube and select that. Now only the cube is selected, and then hit R. And that way only the cube that you've moved will be returned to the goods bag. After everyone has moved to their goods, you move to the collect income step. As usual, you can do everything manually, looking at each person's position on the income track and manually incrementing their cash appropriately. And everyone would do that typically for their own incomes. The simpler way to do it, though, is just to click that button, the Collect Income button, which is on that player aid. And when you do that, everyone's income will automatically be updated at once. Similarly, for the Pay Expenses step, here, again, everyone can do it manually, or you just click the Pay Expenses button and people's expenses are paid. If someone's expenses would drop them below 0, you'll get a message in the display at the top in the chat log that tells you that either their incomes are at 49 or they have gone bankrupt. If they are bankrupt, you'll probably just need to delete their markers to get them off the window. And you have the same options for the next step, which is income reduction. I'm going to just adjust the incomes manually to get them above the income ledges so you can see how this works. And also take this opportunity to show you how to show income that is above 50. When that happens, what you need to do is clone a marker by right-clicking and choosing clone, or just selecting a marker and hitting Control-C, and then drag it to the plus 50 box. Every marker you drag there is going to increase someone's income by 50. Incomes are immediately updated in the bottom left corner of player mats. When you click the income reduction button, everyone's income markers will be moved appropriately, and their player mats should also update. To do goods growth, you can use the dice button at the top of the window and choose the appropriate combo you like. Or what's simpler is to just use the goods growth button on the player aid on the right. When you use the dice button to do it manually, you'll have to roll for the left and then roll for the right. If you use the goods growth button, you'll get all dice rolls at once. And what I'll commonly do is just go through and highlight all the cubes that are coming based on the production rolls, and then you'll need to manually move the cubes to their matching cities. On this particular map, it looks like Portugal only has cities 1 through 4, so I'm going to just use the multi-select feature to select all the cubes in the 5 and 6 columns, and in this case I'm just going to drag a box around all those cubes to select them all, and then return them all to the bag at once. At the end of the turn, click the advanced turn marker. This will move the marker one step forward, and in some maps will take care of whatever end of turn things need to happen as well. At the end of the game, you can do your victory point calculations manually like usual, but if you've looked closely at the player mats, you'll see a lot of information displayed at the bottom of them. That includes the victory points you've earned from your income track position, 3 times that, less 3 times your shares issued, and also the victory points you've earned from track. That's assuming that you've been updating each of your ownership markers with the value of the link they're on. You can also just drag a ownership marker here and update as you like, and as you change the track value of that marker, the tracked victory points will be updated, and you can manually add those two numbers together to figure out everyone's final score. I typically use a spare ownership marker like this on map expansions where there is some other source of victory points. And there you have a very comprehensive look at the Age of Steam Vassal module.